A U.S. Navy destroyer weighs over 9,000 tons, costs close to $2 billion to build, and carries enough missiles and firepower to level a city. This is the most unbelievable event a destroyer crew has ever faced at sea. In a moment, we'll get to the battle where a handful of destroyers charge straight at the largest battleship ever built. But first, you need to see how all of this started, off the coast of Japan, in the middle of the night when two ships came dangerously close and almost nobody realized it in time. Stay with us and go ahead and hit subscribe now because we cover the Navy's most unbelievable stories every single week. Before we get into what can go wrong, you need to see what daily life on a destroyer actually looks like. It's what makes everything else hit so much harder. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyer is the backbone of the Navy's surface fleet, about 500 feet long, roughly 1.5 football fields with room to spare. The Navy has around 72 of these ships spread across the Pacific, the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and the Persian Gulf, most of them guarding aircraft carriers from threats above, below, and on the surface. Here's the part almost nobody talks about, though. These ships are built narrow and low on purpose to shrink their radar signature. That means the hull feels every single wave. Full impact, no cushioning, and the crew feels it in their bones for months straight. Ever wonder what it's actually like to sleep on one of these things? Sailors sleep in berthing compartments, rows of stacked bunks, your own rack giving you about 20 inches of clearance above your face. One compartment holds up to 24 people sharing a single shower. There's almost no privacy anywhere, and someone's always awake on watch, always on radar, ready the second an alarm sounds. Deployed sailors average 5 to 6 hours of sleep a night, and that's a normal day. Because crews are so much smaller than a carrier's, sailors cross-train well outside their own job too. A weapons specialist learns to fight fires. An engine tech learns basic medical response. When people go down in a real crisis, the ship still has to keep running. So here's the real question. What happens when a ship built for exactly this kind of danger still doesn't see it coming in time? On June 17, 2017, the USS Fitzgerald was moving through waters off Japan with 315 sailors aboard. A container ship called the ACX Crystal was closing in nearby, moving at a similar speed. The two bridge teams failed to sort it out. No real warning reached most of the crew before impact. The container ship's bow tore straight into Fitzgerald's side and flooded a berthing compartment full of sleeping sailors. 7 of them never made it out. Think that was a one-time failure? It happened again 2 months later. At 5:21 in the morning on August 21st, 2017, the USS John S. McCain was moving through the crowded Singapore Strait when the crew believed they'd lost steering. While sailors scrambled to correct it, the ship turned directly into the path of an oil tanker called the Alnick MC. 3 minutes. That's all the warning they had before the tanker's bow smashed through McCain's side, tearing open a hole close to 28 feet wide right beside a compartment full of sleeping sailors. 10 died. 48 more were hurt. 2 nearly identical disasters 2 months apart on opposite sides of the world. And it's still not the worst thing a destroyer crew has lived through, because the next danger on this list didn't come from another ship at all. It came from something so small, nobody on board even thought to worry about it. On October 12, 2000, the USS Cole pulled into the port of Aden in Yemen for what should have been a routine refueling stop. At 11:18 that morning, a small boat approached Cole's side, just 2 men aboard. It looked completely harmless next to a guided missile destroyer. What could 2 guys in a tiny boat actually do to a warship built to shoot down missiles? It moved in close enough to touch the hull. Then it exploded. The blast tore open a hole roughly 40 feet by 60 feet. Steel bulkheads folded in on themselves, decks peeled back. Power went dark across huge sections of the ship. 17 sailors were killed and 37 more were wounded, and the crew still standing didn't have the option of waiting for outside help. They were docked in a foreign harbor, taking on water, with another attack still a real possibility. This is where all that cross-training gets tested for real. Cooks, radar operators, and engineers became firefighters and damage control teams within minutes. They shut watertight doors. They dragged hoses through smoke-filled passageways. They searched the wreckage for shipmates who hadn't made it out. And here's something worth knowing. A destroyer's medical team is tiny. Usually just one independent duty corpsman and a handful of hospital corpsmen. Nowhere close to an actual hospital, so the crew had to rely almost entirely on each other. This fight didn't last an hour. It didn't last a day. It went on for more than 96 hours straight, running on almost no sleep, food, or shelter. By the time it was over, the coal hadn't sunk, not because of any one piece of equipment, but because hundreds of sailors kept walking back into their own burning, flooding ship for 4 days, knowing 17 of their own were already gone. Quick question for you. If your ship exploded under you in a foreign harbor with no backup coming for days, do you think you'd hold it together the way this crew did? Drop your answer below. I read every one. And if this video is holding your attention, go ahead and hit like and subscribe now. It genuinely helps this channel keep making videos like this, because as brutal as that day was, it's still one explosion. Off the coast of Okinawa, one destroyer crew faced 22 of them in a single afternoon. By April 1945, American forces were locked in the fight for Okinawa. That put Navy ships directly in range of kamikaze pilots. Destroyers were often sent ahead of the main fleet to hold radar picket stations, basically an early warning system with a crew attached, which also made them the very first target any incoming aircraft would reach. On April 16th, the USS Laffey was holding a picket station about 30 miles north of Okinawa. Then the sky started filling with planes. Think surviving one kamikaze attack sounds intense? Navy records count 22 separate kamikaze attacks against Laffey that single day. Aircraft came from every direction and altitude, some diving straight at the ship, others dropping bombs on the way down. Laffey's gunners had to track one attacker, fire until it fell or passed overhead, then immediately swing toward the next one. There was no pause. The next plane was already coming in. By the end of it, Laffey had been hit by 5 kamikaze aircraft and 4 bombs. 32 sailors were killed, 71 more were wounded, and somehow, Laffey stayed afloat. When a gunner went down, another sailor stepped straight into that exposed position. Because leaving a weapon unmanned meant opening a door for the next kamikaze to walk right through. Across the entire war, 95 American destroyers were hit by kamikazes or piloted flying bombs. Only 13 of them actually sank. Let that sink in. Out of 95 ships hit, only 13 went down. And Laffey is one of the clearest reasons that survival rate held up at all. But at least Laffey's crew could see what was coming for them. What hit 3 other destroyers a few months earlier gave no warning at all, and no enemy to shoot back at. On December 18, 1944, the U.S. Third Fleet was operating east of the Philippines when the weather turned into something nobody was ready for. It became known as Typhoon Cobra. Winds screamed across the decks. Visibility basically vanished behind walls of rain and water. Several of the fleet's smaller warships started rolling more than 70 degrees. Picture that for a second. A sailor standing on what used to be the floor could suddenly find himself staring at something closer to a wall. Here's a question worth asking. What do you think is more dangerous for a warship, an enemy fleet, or the ocean itself? For 3 destroyers that night, the answer was the ocean. Destroyers took the worst of it, fast and heavily armed, but far smaller than the carriers and battleships around them. The USS Hull, the USS Monaghan, and the USS Spence all started rolling farther and recovering slower than they should have. Once a destroyer rolls past the point where it can right itself, everything happens fast. Water pours in, engines fail, pumps stop, the ship turns sideways to the waves, and every hit after that pushes it closer to going all the way over. All 3 of them capsized and sank. Nearly 800 sailors and officers died across the fleet that night, about 775 of those losses coming from just those 3 destroyers alone. Monahan had roughly 6 survivors out of her entire crew. Here's what makes this one different from everything else on this list. This disaster didn't need a torpedo, a bomb, or a single enemy pilot. A narrow hull and one genuinely violent storm at sea were enough on their own to wipe out almost everyone aboard in a matter of hours. So if a storm with 0 enemies involved could sink 3 destroyers in one night, what do you think actually happens when a destroyer crew looks up and sees a real enemy fleet bearing down on them? 1, they have no real way of matching on paper. This is the story we teased you with at the very start. That question has one answer, and it happened at sunrise on October 25th, 1944, during the Battle off Samar. A Japanese naval force had slipped through undetected. 4 battleships, 6 heavy cruisers, 11 destroyers. Among them was the Yamato, the largest battleship ever built, armed with guns over 18 inches wide and weighing more than 60,000 tons fully loaded. Standing in its path was a small American group called Taffy 3, 6 escort carriers, 3 destroyers, and 4 smaller destroyer escorts. Ships never designed to fight anything close to this size of force. By any reasonable expectation, this should have been over in minutes. Instead, the American destroyers turned straight toward the enemy. The USS Johnston, commanded by Ernest Evans, moved first, launching torpedoes at the heavy cruiser Kumano and forcing Japanese ships to turn away, buying precious time for the carriers behind it. Then, the Japanese found Johnston's range. Shells tore through the bridge and wounded Evans himself. A reasonable crew would have pulled back. Johnston went back in anyway, pulling enemy fire away from the escort carrier Gambier Bay. The USS Hull and USS Herman joined the charge right behind it, firing torpedoes at battleships and cruisers while shells landed all around them. The attack worked well enough that the Yamato itself turned away and pulled out of the fight entirely. Not because it was destroyed, but because 3 American destroyers made it too dangerous to stay in place. Hoel took hit after hit until it went dead in the water, and the order came to abandon ship. Only 86 of her crew survived. Johnston kept fighting for over 2 hours before it was finally surrounded and sinking, and when Evans gave the order to abandon ship, he was seen alive in the water afterward, before he disappeared and was never found. He received the Medal of Honor after his death. Out of Johnston's crew of 327, only 141 made it home. Here's the part that still gets me. The Japanese force withdrew, confused by the aggression of ships that should have posed no real threat at all. They pulled back, and Taffy 3 survived a fight it had no business winning. Here's the part of the story that doesn't get talked about enough. Every event on this list was survived or fought through by ordinary sailors, cooks, radar operators, and engine techs barely out of their teens who found themselves fighting fires, pulling shipmates out of flooded compartments, and manning guns they weren't originally trained on. Ever wonder what happens to a crew after the fighting stops? The families of the sailors lost on Fitzgerald and McCain had to learn that a routine deployment turned fatal in the middle of the night. Almost no warning at all. The sailors who survived Cole carried the memory of walking back into a burning ship for 4 straight days, knowing 17 shipmates weren't coming home. The men who lived through Typhoon Cobra were pulled from the water as some of the only survivors of their entire crew, sometimes as few as 6 people out of hundreds. And the sailors who made it off Johnston and Hull spent hours in open water waiting for rescue after watching their own ship go down beneath them. These weren't rare, isolated incidents on the fringes of Navy history. They happened across decades, across oceans, to completely different crews, and every single one is documented in official Navy records to this day. Destroyer crews have survived collisions with almost no warning, a bombing that nearly sank their ship in a foreign harbor, 22 kamikaze attacks in a single day, a typhoon that swallowed 3 destroyers whole in a charge straight at the largest battleship ever built. All of it officially documented. All of it survived, fought through, or paid for by sailors who never made it home. If this gave you a new appreciation for what Navy destroyer crews go through at sea, hit like right now and subscribe. We cover stories like this every single week.